Hello, Merrimack, and good day, and welcome to the first of what we hope will be many installments of sitting with Chief Mike Currier here and talking to you about some of the things that the Merrimack Fire and Rescue perform for us here in the community of Merrimack. As you can see, our first installment we're going to be talking about burning permits that we're getting into the fall, and obviously fall means we're going to be raking up leaves, grass clippings, and maybe doing a particular type of control burn. So we're going to use this opportunity to introduce you folks to the laws, the rules, the regs, the do's, the don'ts of proper burning here in Merrimack. And there's nobody better than the chief of our fire department and the director of our emergency management team, Chief Mike Currier. And Chief, very happy to be sitting here playing host to you, so thank you.
Great, thanks, Bill. I think this is going to be a great program. If we can get this going monthly, it would be awesome. We have a lot of information that we can share with the community and provide them with, do's and don'ts, how to be fire safe, and how you should train your children to exit the house, and all the important stuff with fire safety. But first off, what I like to do is at the beginning of each session, I would like to look at the Merrimack Rescue highlights for the month.
Okay.
And this month what we had is one of the biggest things we had. We had a river rescue over behind Kids Cove on Twin Bridge Park. And basically we got a call from dispatch that a male actually fell about 60 feet down an embankment and landed in a bunch of cut down trees and brush.
Right.
The fire department responded to that location, and as you can see here on one of the slides, slide number 3, we had a good time trying to get the individual. He was on the opposite side of the river that we had any access to, so we had to use just about 9 personnel to get over there, stabilize the patient who was complaining of severe back pain, possible back injuries, and brought in one of our inflatable boats that actually was just replaced within last year, so it already worked well to save a life. And we worked on that scene for probably about an hour and 45 minutes.
When the town council got that report, I was shocked to know that embankment was actually 60 feet high. I know exactly, at the time that we got the announcement, I knew exactly what you were talking about. I had no clue that was 60 feet. That's amazing. That's a heck of a drop as well.
It's a heck of a drop. Apparently he lost his footing and decided to make a jump and to see if he could soften the blow, but after the first impact, about a third of the way down, it turned into a tumble, which related in the injuries he sustained. So again, looking at the slide number 1 here, you can see that we have a boat across the water. We had to put up a high line rope system that we used to ferry the boat back and forth. Within that same slide, you can see the crews working on packaging the patient and all the trees and shrub brush that they had to disentangle him in. And then finally, as we got him into the rescue boat and used the ropes to pull him back across the river, and the crews on this side of the river started doing additional medical care, he was placed on the gator that we purchased for rescue and fire service for all our parks, and he was driven out to a waiting ambulance and transported to the hospital.
Yeah. And one of the things I've learned from you is that once you transport the patient to the hospital, your job is done. There's really no, you don't get any feedback as to what the patient's status is. Just your job to get them to the hospital and be prepared to take the next call.
Yeah, pretty much. But on occasion, some of the severe ones, we keep checking back to make sure that how the patient is, and all the guys that spend a lot of time in their career, trying to save lives. It really gives closure to that rescue to know that, hey, what they did was successful, and the patient was doing good.
Physical job, very demanding, and I don't want to say it was a tough rescue, but it certainly was a very technical rescue. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Very technical rescue, because there was a lot of aspects to the rescue. I had to have crews walking across down trees to get to the patient at first. We had to get the equipment down to that location, which it's a fair distance up down the hill.
Yep.
And then inflate the boat, set up the rope system, tie the boats in, have enough people on both sides of the river so we can complete the rescue, and it went very well. We have good professionals on the Merrimack Fire Department and trained very well.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. And I can speak to that with a fair degree of personal experience. So, good job.
Excellent. So what I'd like to do too is, kind of give a highlights of where we're looking for in the future. So future programs I'd like to see, we're going to look at, one of the big questions I get a lot of times is from a lot of the citizens is, why does a fire truck follow an ambulance?
Right.
So that's going to be one of our shows in the future.
Good.
Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors,
Yep.
what they are, how they work, and where you need them in your home.
They're very critical, especially a couple of years ago when, as you know, when my wife and I adopted our daughter Jade. In order for us to be foster parents, we had to be certified and have the home inspected, and that was one of the key ingredients that we needed to have our home inspected, was make sure that our carbon monoxide and fire detection alarms in the house were fully functional and operational. So that's certainly critical.
Yeah, we do a lot of inspections for adoptions, child care, the whole gambit.
Right.
So we do a lot of work there. Also, wood stove and pellet stove safety is coming up.
Yep.
Fire extinguishers. Should you have them in your house?
Vital.
What types?
Oh, you should have them,
and
regardless.
where should you keep them?
Yeah.
I get some houses where you look at the fire extinguishers and they're in a closet in the bottom corner behind the pots and pans. It's kind of hard to get to.
It's hard to get to, absolutely.
And then what I'd like to do is kind of, as we get along in this program, start reviewing the monthly calls and to give everybody an idea of how busy the fire department really is. So I have a final slide I'm going to show here, slide number 5, that indicates our monthly calendar for July. And as you can see, from the top of the calendar, that's midnight, and the bottom of the calendar is back around to midnight again.
Yep.
So the crews work 24-hour shifts. And as you see the calendar, you see the multiple colors on the calendar. It indicates that green indicates that there's one call in the same hour. Yellow indicates 2 calls in the same hour. Orange indicates 3 or more calls in the same hour. Yep. And then this month we've kind of been lucky. We didn't have more than 4 calls in the same hour, so there's no pink on there. But in the past we had. So as you look at this chart, you can see these guys are up 24 hours a day running on calls, and they're doing a great job at it. So this month alone in July we had 309 calls.
That's a lot.
Okay.
That's amazing.
In June we had 310, May 323.
And what was the percentage of them being advanced life support versus basic life support?
We're running about 63% medical right at this point in time.
Okay, and just for the viewing audience to know, basic life support means they go out and just check on the person, and sometimes they may have to go to the hospital, but it might not be an emergent kind of thing. They just got to get them there, and obviously advanced life support is critical and got to get them there.
Yeah, a broken bone could be a basic life support call.
Okay, I didn't know that.
A broken bone is a broken arm.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's a BLS call. There's not a lot of, it's pretty straightforward call. Yep. ALS calls, being advanced life support, indicate that a cardiac event is an ALS call, so where an ambulance goes out with 2 people on it, and then you have to have a driver, so that only puts 1 in the back.
Right.
So if you have to do CPR, somebody has to monitor medication, somebody has to do monitor the cardiac monitor, the paramedics administering medications, and trying to talk to the hospital all at the same time. You're talking maybe 4 or 5 people in that ambulance. And again, there's one of the reasons why we have an engine follow the ambulance.
Absolutely.
On ALS calls.
But that's for another time,
That's
another
for
place.
another place.
Absolutely. So we're going to start talking about burning permits, and obviously you're governed by the New Hampshire RSAs, and obviously there are burning laws within the state of New Hampshire. So I guess the first question is, what types of laws are out there? Who has jurisdiction? Who controls the laws? And what is your role in terms of not just enforcement but also education?
Okay, the laws in the state of New Hampshire for burning are all controlled by the state of New Hampshire Department of Forests and Lands. Okay, the legislation writes the laws. They're enforced by the Director of Forests and Lands, who has his staff, and then coming down from that, they have the Forest Ranger, who assigns and certifies the forest fire wardens for the state of New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And how the forest fire wardens work is that locally in every town, the fire chief is sworn in as a New Hampshire forest fire warden. Okay. So it gives him the rules or the ability to enforce the laws from the state of New Hampshire, because they're actually part of that state task force, if you want to call it, for firefighting in wildlands. And then that flows down to the deputy wardens, which, because I'm the warden in town, I assign deputy wardens, which are my officers that work for the department. And that gives them the authority to write citations and enforce those laws. And then because we issue a lot of burn permits in Merrimack, Actually, a lot. We've have on the weekend we'll go way over 200-300 permits.
That's a lot.
That is a lot
when you really think about it.
Campfires or burning or something in that line. So it's a lot. So what we also do is we've gone through the state and we have issuing agents. So the firefighters in Merrimack are issuing agents, so they can issue the permit.
Right.
They can't enforce the laws. They're just issuing agents.
It comes down to you and the assistants.
Pretty much to enforce those laws.
Okay.
So in the state of New Hampshire, there's about 2,300 wardens, deputy wardens, and special wardens, and they are in the process of enforcing the rules and laws. Under the burning rules, the RSA 2227L17.3, that's probably the last time I'm going to say code, because I can imagine that gets boring, is that we have a multiple type of permits. We have a daily fire permit, we have a multiple day fire permits, you have annual or seasonal permits, and then you have commercial permits. And how that all works basically is a daily permit is when you want to just have a campfire or something in a specific category, which I'll get into later, and have it for just one day, overnight or something like that. We have a multiple day permits for when you can get a class 2 or class 3 permit where you're going to burn brush. So you spend a Saturday, Sunday raking up brush and you don't get it all done. And you want to make sure that you have a permit that'll go. So we can issue permits up to 7 days for a class 2 and a class 3 to give you that time so you don't have to keep running back to the fire station to get another permit to burn that brush. And then we have annual or seasonal permits where there's special requirements, and I'll go over that of when you can burn seasonally. So you'll come in, get a permit, we'll go out and inspect your fireplace or where you're going to burn, and then if it meets the state requirements, we issue a seasonal permit. And by signing that permit, you're taking that responsibility that you're going to follow the laws. So we're not going to chase after you, we're not going to follow you unless we get a complaint, then we can come out and we can revoke permits.
So I guess moving forward, with people driving through town, kind of highlighting on I think it's your rating system, and you've got your big billboard.
Yep, Smokey Bear.
With Smokey Bear right outside the fire station, and I really enjoy that. But I know that there's actually a specific, I don't want to say protocol, but there's things that you have to look for that allow a low rating, a moderate rating, and a high rating. And as I learned from talking to you, there's actually 2 more ratings higher than high. I didn't think you can go higher than high, so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the rating system so that when people drive through town, they have an understanding of what you're monitoring. Yeah,
when you get issued a permit, we have 5 different ratings, and we issue permits on a Class 1 and a Class 2. So a Class 1 is a low fire danger day.
Okay.
That's predicted by the state to determine if that during that day, fire spread is not predicted to be very great. Class 2 is a moderate. There could be some wildfires, if somebody really is not paying attention, but the likelihood of that spread is not going to be there.
Right, and it's also incumbent that when those permits are issued, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's anticipated that the person who has the permit, they're going to be out there monitoring that fire or monitoring that burn while they are out there in case something gets out of control. They can douse the fire themselves without having to call you folks. I mean, there's some responsibility behind the permit is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and then we'll flash through the permits and I can highlight
I apologize.
that
Jumping
quickly
ahead.
too on that.
Sorry.
Also, Class 3 is what they call a high fire danger day. That means if the fire gets away, it's going to spread rapidly. Depending on the wind conditions, we may issue or may not issue, and issue the permit for that day. And then there's 2 other classes: a Class 4, which is very high fire danger, and a Class 5, which is extreme. On a 4 and 5, there's no permits issued. And then during that whole process, through the state through the governor can issue a red flag warning, which actually can close down parts of the state park and national forests.
And that's done that's done by the governor. That's done in concert with the state
Department of Forest and Lands.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So just kind of to move on here, we have 4 categories of fire: 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to hit these quickly so we can move through. But a Category 1 permit is basically a campfire. It's about 2 feet in diameter. It's surrounded by rocks or a impermeable metal enclosure, which will contain the fire. So that's one of the least hazards we have to worry about. That's a seasonal fireplace, and those are usually only issued to campgrounds. So that's why when you go to a campground in the state or the national forest, you don't have to go find a permit because those are issued annually for that whole campground.
Right.
Category 2, again, is a little bit bigger. It's a 4-foot in diameter fire, but a Category 2 still has a fire ring around it or rocks, and those are issued either daily or 7-day period, and they must be at least 50 feet from a home, and you can only burn on those between 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. Category 3, same, 4-foot in diameter, but there's no fire ring. That's the one you're going to ask for when you want to burn your brush, because you're going to try to keep it in a 4-foot diameter, but as you pile your brush in, a piece might stick out here, stick out there. It's your job to ensure that you control it, but it gives you a little more leeway on being able to burn that brush. And again, that's burning between 5 p.m. and 9 a.m.
And very quickly, how did they come up with those hours between 5 p.m. and 9 a.m.? Is there a reason behind it?
Yeah, between the 5 p.m. and 9 a.m., that's when it starts to get dusk. Humidity starts to set in a little bit. It's not as dry. The wind starts to die down.
Okay.
So that potential for fire spread is going to be less.
Okay.
And that Class 3 you can get as a 7-day permit also. That changed the last few years. We used to give up to 30 days, but the state changed that. And then a Class 4, which is a seasonal, or what we call a commercial permit.
Right.
Okay. And that is, again, 4-foot in diameter, 50 foot from a structure, but we issue it seasonal, and you can burn that one anytime. And that's basically for commercial operations, being like a apple orchard.
Okay.
They spend a lot of time trimming all those branches.
Yep, all the pruning that needs to be done. They gotta,
and they have a pile. So it's hard for them to start burning from 5 to 9 the next morning. So that's not their normal work hours. So they can get granted through the forest ranger and myself, we can sign a permit that allows them to burn during the day, so they can burn those. But it's mostly commercial.
So anecdotally, my neighbor's Pete Gagnon over at Willow Pond Nursery, when I see him burning during the day, he probably has a commercial permit.
He's got a commercial permit.
There you go.
And I've talked to Pete many times, and also Curry Orchards gets a seasonal permit from us for commercial. So sometimes you may smell something during the day. We'll still go out and check it out, but it usually turns out that it's a commercial permit. One of the first things I'd want to make sure is that I want to ask about is, and this is the biggest thing that we have, what cannot be burned in a fire.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's a huge thing that we're looking at. And basically what you can burn is clean, dry wood. Okay, there can be no household trash, no packaging materials, no plastics, no coated or laminated paper, no rubber, no painted or treated wood. There's air emissions requirement for that. Oily rags, no animal, vegetable, or kitchen wastes, and no pressure-treated wood or composite beams, because they have glues that actually give off toxic vapors. So people standing around can have issues.
Really meant for like yard waste.
Yard waste and a campfire.
A campfire.
Maybe burn up your branches.
Okay.
Sit down, roast your marshmallows. I don't think anybody would want to roast marshmallows over treated wood or pressure-treated wood.
Oh, I don't.
Because it's not a good thing to do.
Oh, absolutely not.
So, and as you can see here on slide number 13, that would come up here, is that and these are pictures of incidents that we've had where people push things up with a tractor, light it on fire, and it just continues to burn for days. We have to spend hours putting it out.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's a nuisance.
Okay, so do I need a permit again for a chimney or any pits or anything like that? Okay, so that's one of the biggest questions I get, and the answer is yes.
Yep.
What we do is we give them a Category 2 permit. It's usually a seasonal permit. You come in once, we'll inspect it to make sure that it is meeting the state requirements, and that's slide 15, which you can see now. And what we do is we end up leaving the compliance up to you. Okay, the laws are there. You sign the permit saying that you know the laws, and if they get away from you, then there's ramifications for that. So it's the ownership up to the person getting the permit. But the seasonal permit, as you can see, it's an 8-foot diameter cleaned area of mineral soil, so you clean it all off. And the reason why we ask for that is that if roots from trees get going because you have a fire on top of them, those roots will start burning, and it'll burn underground from up to 50 to 100 feet. And then a fire may pop up 100 feet, but it may be on somebody else's property. Okay, so we don't want that to happen. So by putting a fire on the ground, you have to do an 8-foot clear of mineral soil, and then directly underneath the fire pit, being 2 feet or most likely 2 feet. You add sand to the bottom, dig it out, put sand in the bottom of it to put your logs on.
Sanitary stone.
Yep.
Something like
Something
that.
just to prevent that fire from getting out into the ground.
Okay.
And then clearance above is basically about 10 feet above any obstructions, tree limbs, etc.
Right.
And looking at your chimnea, it's the same requirements, other than you don't have to put the sand on it because the chimnea or those fire pits you buy are not on the ground. They're
Right.
above the ground.
They're above the ground.
So that works out pretty well for protecting the ground.
So, what is an homeowner's responsibility when they get a fire permit, and is it a revocable permit?
Well, the homeowner's responsibility is absolute. Okay, that means everything that they do by igniting that fire, they're responsible for. Okay, they're responsible for the permit, the size of the fire, and meeting all the codes. They have to have complete control of the fire, and if the fire gets out of control, any extinguishing costs or loss of anything that gets on somebody else's property can be liable to them to pay for it.
Okay.
So trees are considered a commodity in the state of New Hampshire. So there's lumber mills that have a price on trees. So depending on the size of a tree, if it's destroyed by fire, you may have to pay restitution for the property owner where that tree was damaged.
Right.
Okay, because that's where it goes. And in violation of any of your permits, there's a $2,000 up to $2,000 fine and a year in prison for violation of the permit requirements.
But there's a series of, if I remember correctly, there's a series of first offense, second offense, third offense regarding the laws that, the state's not monkeying around as it relates to issuing fire permits. When a permit gets issued to an owner, they're asking you to follow the law.
Correct.
And if you don't follow the law, there are going to be specific penalties that you're going to have to pay.
So, and being that is, you're allowed to have 3 offenses or violations.
3 strikes, you're out.
3 strikes over a 7-year period. So that gets tight.
I mean, 7 years. We're not talking a year
not
or 2
a year,
years. 7
not 3
years.
strikes a year. 3 over 7 years.
That's.
And then what happens
that's
is
tight.
that permit can be revoked up to 2 years.
So when I get my fire permit, I have to be over the age of 18.
Yep.
I have to own my property, and I need to provide a picture of who I am and some type of either a letter or a bill that shows that I own my property, or my tax bill, or something like
driver's
that.
License
driver's
is fine.
license
Yep,
is more than
usually
sufficient.
for driver's license more than sufficient.
Okay. So what if I'm, I just mentioned my neighbor Pete Gagnon. What if I wanted to burn some brush on his property? Do I need to get a permit from you, or can I just use Pete's permit?
Well, actually, if Pete has a permit, you can use his permit, but he's still responsible for it, and he has to be there.
Okay.
Okay. But if you're renting or you're renting a house in a location where you want to have a permit, a campfire, whatever, you have to have permission from the property owner in writing, okay, before we can issue that permit. Now, we've had some issues in the past where people have written their own property owner letter, and that turns into a major legal issue with the state, because what happens there is that not only are you in violation of the laws, you have forgery issues that you have to contend with.
Forgery. I never would.
Okay,
that's
you
something I
signed
wouldn't.
somebody
Exactly.
else's name
That's
to
correct.
that's a legal state document.
Yeah, I never would have thought that.
So, and we keep those on file, so we can compare to those. So
that's about it. I mean, that's what people need to do to follow our burning laws. It's kind of straightforward. It's not, it's not complicated.
Yep.
It's just a matter of somebody, coming down to the firehouse and introducing themselves, saying, "I need to burn some brush. Can I get a fire permit?" And just filling out the form, dotting the i's, crossing the t's. I understand that the fire department do they have to go out to your house to inspect the property?
We only go out if it's a seasonal.
Seasonal permit.
Okay, because it's going to be it's going to be up to you to maintain the code. So it's a seasonal permit. If you're going to be burning just brush, we give you the permit. It's up to you to make sure you follow the laws. And some of the laws you have to understand. It says right on the permit that you must be in attendance of the fire at all times. You can't leave it unattended.
Yep.
We look for that. And I think last but not least, I want to hit one more thing here is that
go right ahead.
In the wintertime, you don't need a permit, but you're still liable for all the laws.
All the laws.
And what that means is you have to have snow coverage within 100 feet of 3 to 6 inches before you can burn.
that's just, it's kind of funny. In the summertime, I need a permit, but the wintertime, I just can go ahead and burn. Just clear my shovel a spot out and start burning.
Theoretically, we don't have a lot of fuel.
True.
Okay, true.
That's
fuels.
true.
It's not dry. It's wet. It's rainy.
Yeah.
It's covered by snow, so it's not going to, proceed or propagate through the woodland as fast as it would on a dry day. So by doing that, it makes it work very well for all of us.
Well, Chief, I want to thank you for the opportunity to host this. I think this was tremendously informative, despite my coughing fits, and I apologize to the viewing audience about my coughing fits. I have no idea where they came from, but I hope this is going to be beneficial to everybody in the community, not just for this episode, but future episodes down the road. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I'll let Chief Courier have the second to last words.
Okay, just the last thing, if you want information on permits, you can go right to the fire department website at www.merrimacknh.gov/fire. And there's actually links on there to give you the fire danger days. Click on the link, it comes right up on the state website. And there's also a place where you can actually get your permits online.